It's the Arch Advocate Show. Never meet your heroes. It's a funny little saying, isn't it? And in the English language, we have a lot of funny little sayings, and I love them. Like, you guys know how I nerd out on words and sayings, like whatever. I remember, like, a couple weeks ago, I broke down, like, the history of that saying, like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. All right? That's a weird thing to say in the modern day, because it's like there's absolutely no context for that saying. Who's throwing bathwater out? You know what I mean? We don't throw bathwater out. We unplug the tub. Who's throwing away babies? You know what I mean? But in its time, like, that saying made a lot of sense, right? Or take, like, throw your hat in the ring. Well, that's kind of a weird saying, isn't it? I don't even know, like, what ring? Is it a contest, like at the circus? If you can get the hat through the ring, you get a teddy bear? Like, no, there's actually a history to that saying, and it's actually pretty profound. It's, back in the old days, like, people were poor. Like, the whole world has been poor pretty much the entire history of the world. There's been a couple of hubs like Babylon and Egypt and Rome and whatever, but those were anomalies. For the most part, everybody has always been poor. And so back in the day, it was like one way that men could make money would be competitive fighting, pugilism, boxing or whatever, wrestling, whatever, kung fu. And, it takes a great deal of courage to get into the ring, right? The boxing ring. It takes a lot of courage to do that, because it's like once you step in that ring, whether you win or lose, you are going to get your ass kicked, right? Even if you win, like, to get punched in the face or get, punched in the ribs real good, or punched in the gut where all of your organs are, it's like you're going to be feeling it for quite a while, and quite possibly, like, if you get a tooth knocked out, guess what? That's permanent. That's a permanent situation. Even in the modern day where we have all kinds of crazy dentistry, it's like, but back in those days, it was like, dude, if you lose a tooth, and then you're just going to walk around you're just going to be missing a tooth guy, or missing a bunch of teeth. And so, at the same time, it's like, dude, you got to get that money. And whether you win or lose, you're going to get some money. And it's like, dude, I got kids. I have to fight. And it's like, there's that, it takes a lot of courage. And even, if you watch, like, The Fighter and the Kid with Brandon Schaub and Brian, oh God help me, it's a very funny podcast, but even professional fighters talk about it. It's like, man, it's scary. These are UFC fighters, like guys who fight professionally and get millions of dollars for it. Even those guys talk about, like, dude, it's hard to get into the octagon. It's hard to get into the ring, because man, you get into that ring, I don't care if you're Conor McGregor, I don't care if you're, like, whoever you are, it's like, dude, you are going to be fighting a literal ninja. You're going to, whoever you are, you're going to be fighting a guy who has a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So whoever you are, it's like, you're going to get hurt. And you are very possibly going to be put to shame, horrible shame, you're going to be dominated by another human being in front of everybody. That's a terrible thing. And so what used to happen back in the day is they would say, like, look, if you're trying to get up enough courage to get into that ring, just take your hat, which back in those days, it's like you couldn't just afford another hat, because you didn't have any money. So they would say, look, take your hat and throw it in the ring, because then you're going to have to go get your hat, and then you're going to find yourself standing in the ring. That will help you to get the courage up enough to get into the ring. It takes a lot less courage to take your hat off and throw it. Throw your hat in the ring, you know what I mean? So we have these weird little sayings, and they're scattered all through, the English language, and I love them. I love picking them apart and looking at the history of them and whatever. There's another saying that's not so well known. You've probably heard it before, but it's not something we use a whole lot. It goes, never meet your heroes. Never meet your heroes. Why? I'm going to get to that, but first I'm going to give you guys a shout to my new patron, Eli Rodriguez. Eli, thanks for the $5, man. that's huge, right? Every ounce counts, man. I really appreciate your commitment to, sending in $5 a month. Thank you so much. You're always welcome on the show. If you want to talk about anything, argue with me, disagree with me. Actually, I kind of prefer that. But talk about anything, you are always welcome on the show. Timing's a little bit of a bear to get around, but that's to all the listeners. Listen, this is your show, right? Please participate. We all need to come together. These are perilous times. Thanks for the dough. Look, never meet your heroes. Right? The reason for that saying is it because you're always going to be disappointed. Right? I've met John C. McGinley, the guy that used to play Dr. Cox on Scrubs. Scrubs, by the way, quite possibly... that was quite possibly like the greatest... It was one of the greatest shows ever made, in my opinion. It was just funny. And I've told you guys before, like, I don't laugh a lot, you know what I mean? And so I really appreciate it when something really makes me laugh so hard that I cry. There was a lot of those moments on Scrubs, right? Anyways, John C. McGinley played Dr. Cox. He was also in Wall Street. He was also in Platoon. He's been in a lot of things. I met him one time. And guess what? Like, if you ever see John C. McGinley in an interview, that's how he really is. He's a very intense guy who does not exactly, spread puppies and rainbows. He's not a very happy guy, from what I can tell. All right, he's successful. He lives in Malibu. That's actually where I met him. I met his son. He's got a boy he's 21 now, but he has special needs and they're very severe. And John C. McGinley is a very stressed out kind of guy. Like, I met him one time. I was like, because he was actually signing some paperwork for me. And you just meet him and it's like, oh, you're actually a real guy who's not the kind of guy that I would want to hang out with. Not a bad guy, but just, the kind of guy. I met, who was the guy, Michael, I can't remember his last name, but he was the guy in Reservoir Dogs that cut the other guy's ear off. Michael something or other. Right? He's always like a real bad guy in all the movies. Guess what? In real life, total sweetheart. Absolute, just a humble, super nice guy. You wouldn't think it. Jamie Foxx, I told you I stood very close to Jamie Foxx once. Very tall. I didn't know that. I was shocked because whenever you see him in movies, it's like, he always looks like he's short. You meet him in real life. No, that dude is towering. He's like 6'4", right? And you know how like LeBron James has, his shoulder to height ratio is where it needs to be. You know what I mean? Like he's as wide as he is tall. Jamie Foxx, same way. And you wouldn't know that, like when you see that movie where he played the cello and all that stuff, he just looks like some skinny wrapped. It's amazing because like when you meet him in real life, he's like, no, he looks like a professional athlete. He's tall, and he's just made out of nothing but bone and sinew. I mean, he's just solid muscle, and he's huge. You know what I mean? It was really bizarre to meet him. It was like, whoa, I didn't know that. But anyways, never meet your heroes is the saying. And the reason for that is because once you meet, like when you look up to people and then you find out about them, it's always going to be a disappointment. Because everyone is flawed. There is no such thing as a good man. Right? There was one time, 2,000 years ago. But prior to that and after that, no good man. Right? Go back to King David, right? And for those of us that grew up in the church, it's like, King David, that God spoke some words over him one time and said, this is a man who's truly, like, this guy gets it. This is a man who is after my heart. This is a guy who seeks me out. This guy is peculiar in the sense that, man, he really, when it comes to seeking the face of God, this guy gets it. But you read, you know what I mean? Like you read the entire story of King David's life, it's like, boy, this guy was a real piece of work, right? First, he uses his political power to have sex with a beautiful woman who was married, recently married, so she would have been very young. Then he has his, he basically murders her husband, has him killed on the battlefield, right? And then this, and then that, and then this, and like when you get to like the end of his life, it's like, man, this, he raised really, he had a lot of children that just turned out really bad. King Solomon worked out okay, but even King Solomon had his problems, like severe problems. But he one of his sons ended up raping one of his daughters. You know what I mean? King David, when he died, he was very miserable. He was not a happy man at the end, because he looked back over his life and he's like, my one son is dead, and he's dead because he raped my daughter, and blah, blah, blah. Like and like you come into contact with King David, like when you read that story and you really put yourself in the story and try to imagine King David standing in front of you and interacting with King David, you realize like, oh no, this was actually a bad guy, right? And a good guy, right? He certainly has a lot of things too on his record that were very good, but he also has some things on his record that are very bad. Never meet your heroes. That's why we have that saying, because when you come in contact with people and you admire them and you look up to them, it's like, it's difficult. That's why, listen, I keep telling you guys, I keep threatening you guys with, I'm going to quit cursing. Cussing. I don't curse, I cuss, right? I'm going to quit cussing, and it's for a number of reasons that are legitimate, and I will do it because it's like, I'm married now. And my sweet wife, like, she's, she gets a lot of her English from me. And so now she cusses sometimes too. And it's like, I hate it. I don't like to hear that. And I know that it's my fault. I know that I'm doing it. I don't want to hear that language coming from her because she has, she's tiny and she's got a sweet little voice and whatever. I don't want to hear those words coming from her. And I know she gets it from me. And now I've got a 1-year-old little boy that's, he's just starting to make sort of more constructive noises with his voice, and and it's like, man, I have to quit cussing because I'm going to raise a little cusser. I don't want that. But one of the other reasons why is because that I in a sense I almost insist on using potty mouth language, dirty words, no words, is because I don't want people to look up to me. I don't want to give the impression that I'm some sort of holy man. I'm afraid of that, right? Because I've actually been in that situation where people were looking up to me. You're going to have to read this in the book that I'm writing. It's right now it's called The Walk Away. I might have to change the name of the book because of the walk away movement, and they've actually trademarked that phrase. But there was one time in my life in the last, I guess it was about 6 years ago, where there was an entire church that the pastor of the church came to me and said, listen, I literally think that you are an angel from heaven, that you've been sent here by God, and that you are like a divine, the whatever an angel is, a divine species or whatever, right? Like he wasn't saying angel in the sense that like the way that we, Todd Milligan, he's a saint. Eli Rodriguez, what a saint. No, like he was saying like literal, he thought I was an angel from heaven. And I had to, like, in that moment, like, when he said that, I realized, like, okay, I need to show you that I am not. And I did, and it was not pretty, right? Like, I had to show him, like, some of the, like, recent sins I had committed. It was very uncomfortable, right? But I'm afraid of that, right? Because I myself have been caught up in that sort of hero worship, where you look at people like, I still love listening to Anthony Robbins, right? You can say like, oh, he's a cult leader. Yeah, kind of, kind of. But, like a lot of what Anthony Robbins teaches is like, dude, 90% of everything Anthony Robbins teaches is dude, get a schedule. Write out a schedule. And in that schedule, you have to put things on every line that you want to accomplish. They're called goals. And if you have them written down, you can check them off one by one. And this is 90% of how to accumulate wealth and be a happy person. That's 90% of it. Get a schedule, fill it with stuff. Right? And it doesn't even matter what you fill it with, because as long as you're filling it with stuff, like, you can replace things and be like, oh, okay, well, it's 10:30 and I have written down here, go to lunch, but now I want to change it to whatever, you know what I mean? And then Anthony Robbins, and by the way, he used to have the most expensive home in San Diego. It was in Del Mar. It was literally a castle. He had a castle built for himself. Right, so he's a San Diego guy for a long time, but then he got a divorce. Him and his wife got a divorce, and I was just like, oh no. Like, you're supposed to be successful in everything. You're supposed to be successful in your health, in your marriage, with your money, in your businesses, in your other interpersonal You're supposed to be the guru of success. Like, you can't teach people how to be successful if you are not successful. And that really broke my heart. I was like, oh, what a letdown. I was very anti Anthony Robbins for a number of years. But then I just realized, oh, you know what? He's just a guy. He's just a guy, just like you, just like me. And that's why I said everything that I said about Jordan B. Peterson. Is like, look, there is something in us that leans very quickly, very easily, and with no effort whatsoever to hero worship. And one of the major clues that I had of how to overcome that, it came to me, it was one of easily the most notable sermon I ever heard. I've heard a lot of great sermons, right? And some of them are better than others, and some of them have different ranks in my mind, like most profound, most this and most that. But this sermon I'm going to tell you about was the most notable. It's the one that sticks out in my mind the most. And I'm going to tell it to you. But I want you to keep this in the context of Jordan B. Peterson and the sort of feeling of being let down that so many people are feeling right now and thinking right now about this guy. I want you to understand, it's like the reason, if you're feeling disappointed in this guy, the reason why is that's the reason why we have this saying, never meet your heroes, because they'll let you down. Because you have it built up in your mind that these people are superior people. They're better than, above. And I'm quoting the first episode of Firefly. But come on, brown coats. Anybody? Whatever. But this guy, I remember this was, I don't know, I was probably 22 or 23. This guy came to church. And I think it was during the summertime, and we were all getting ready. The men were having the men's retreat, and this guy comes to town, and he was going to be the key speaker during the week-long men's retreat. And before we went on retreat, he came to the church for all the people, the men and women. And he gave the sermon. He's like, okay, everybody, I'm so-and-so, and I'm going to be, teaching all week at the men's retreat. And we could see this guy. He was he was a short guy, right? 5'8", 5'10", not terribly short, but, not tall. And pudgy, right? Short, pudgy, wearing the type of suit that pastors usually wear. What I'm getting at is the guy was not a looker, all right? Not easy on the eyes. Not the kind of guy that you think of when another guy looks at him and says, I want to be like that, you know. Not that guy. Not a good-looking fella, but his wife, who was standing right next to him on stage as he was introducing himself to the church, was. She was tall and, you know, in their, not old age, but I guess they were in their 30s or 40s at the time. You know, she still had her long hair and it was still silky and blonde, and she was very pretty and very statuesque, right? So she had, you know, you could tell she had been at least somewhat classically trained to, you know, hold herself up in a, you know, in a certain posture, and you know what I mean? She was a lovely woman, and it was kind of a stark contrast between the two. She was gorgeous, and he was just this short little pudgy dude. It's kind of funny. It's kind of like, you know, like on sitcoms during the 90s, you know what I mean? There would be like, you know, Kevin James, this short little fat dude, and then the other lady that was, you know, hot and skinny and, you know, whatever. Leah Remini, that's who I'm thinking of. You know, it's kind of like that. That's who this couple looked like. We go off to the men's retreat, and the first sermon this guy gives, right? It's just, we're up in the mountains, and it's just a room full of dudes, right? He goes into his lesson, his first teaching, and he starts off by saying, listen, guys, I need to start off the premise of this particular sermon. I had to set it up. He says, I cheated on my wife, right? He confesses in front of all of us. Like, he's a preacher. He's a traveling, you know, like, he's the guest. You know, like, we've all paid money to come listen to this guy teach us. And the first thing he says is, I cheated on my wife recently. Not like recently in the last couple of weeks, but like, you know, a few years ago or whatever. And it was really strange because we had all seen his wife, right? So the first thing that comes in your mind is like, dude, wait a minute. You're saying you cheated on your wife. Like, you're fortunate enough to have a wife that looks like that, because she's clearly way outside of your class. You know what I mean? So how is it that you, right? Like, if it was her up there saying, I cheated on my husband, we'd be like, I can see that. But you know what I mean? Like, this short, fat, ugly little dude, it's like, you cheated on your wife. And then he goes in, he starts saying, like, listen, you know, you don't understand, man. Like, when you are a person whose profession is to stand on stage with lights on you and a microphone and a crowd of people who are all paying attention to you, that's power. And it's a power that comes to you whether you like it or not. And, you know, because of that, because you're up on stage, there's, you know, the way that affects particularly single women with children is that they look up and what they see is the alpha male. They see that, like, okay, that guy is the strongest man in the room. He must be, you know what I mean? Like, there's something in the DNA that happens in a woman's mind. Right? And to men too, but a different way, right? The psychology of it affects men differently, but it's for women, particularly vulnerable women, like women who have had children outside of marriage and are single and are struggling, whatever. They look to him and they see he must be the strongest man in the room. I need to mate with him. He says, you guys don't understand. Like, he's like, look at me, I'm short and fat, and you know, every week or every 2 weeks, I'll have another young lady coming up to me saying, God told me that you need to leave your wife and that you and I are to be married. And he's like, at first, man, it's like you can blow that stuff off, but when it happens week in and week out and week in and week out, it's like, dude, it wears you down. And I caved one time. And I cheated on my beautiful, lovely, God-fearing wife. Right? That's how he started this week of the men's retreat off. That's how he started that particular sermon off. Is he exposed the fact, he's like, look, don't think I'm a good man. Right? Get it out of your mind right now. I'm not. I am flawed, and, to prove it, I'm going to tell you this story about how I betrayed the trust of my lovely wife, right? That has stuck with me ever since, because that was the only time where, like, I saw a man using his power to rid himself of his power. That was the first time I'd ever seen that. And I have so much respect for that guy for that, right? Because that's real. He was using his power to make sure that nobody in that room was experiencing hero worship with him. Never meet your heroes. There's a bunch of people right now that, that have idolized Jordan B. Peterson. I've done it too. I did it too, right? But the only difference with me is, like, this is something that I've already put a great deal of thought into. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of thought. And so I think I can, if that's you right now, if you're kind of struggling with that, like, wow, what a dick, douchey thing to say. Maybe, Brett Kavanaugh should step down, and all that. Like, it's like, dude, the thing is that Jordan B. Peterson is not a good man, because nobody, excuse me, it's 8 o'clock, because nobody is a good man. Nobody is, right? And even when, like, here's a barn burner for you. You go back into the Gospels when somebody walked up to Jesus and said, "Good master, what good thing must I do to be accepted into the kingdom of heaven?" And Jesus says, he doesn't even answer the question, really. At first, he goes, he turns to him and says, "Why do you call me good? Nobody's good." Like, that's a passage of scripture that you could literally spend the rest of your life meditating on and never get to the bottom of it. Like, what did he mean by that? What does that mean? What does that mean? Good master, what good thing must I do to be, acceptable or whatever? And he doesn't even answer the question. He just looks at him and he says, "Why do you call me good? Nobody's good. Nobody's good." That's Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the Messiah. God in the flesh walking amongst us. That's what he said. Don't ask me to tell you what that means, because I have no idea. Right? Give me another 40 years on that, I'll get back to you. You know what I mean? Like, these are very difficult things to encounter, and I don't think that, I don't think that people should jump ship, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like, don't follow people. Don't follow people. Like, you can learn from just about anybody. Anybody who has something to teach, you can learn from. Right? Like, if you went to welding school, right? You went to welding school and you sat in class and the guy's up there and he's got his TIG welder or his arc welder or whatever he's got, and he's teaching you how to, create a bead that doesn't, whatever. Like, you can learn from that guy. You can learn how to become a good welder. Right? Let's say your teacher, he's the best welder in the world, and he's now going to teach you. You're not going to be the best welder in the world, but you're certainly not going to be the shittiest one, are you? Because you're learning from the best. Like, you're going to learn the right way to do it, and maybe someday you'll get so good at it that you'll surpass him. But you know what I mean? And then you learn all this stuff from this guy who's a welder teacher, and then you find out, that he's, he beats his children. Oh, I need to get rid of all of the things that he taught me. It's like, no, you don't. You certainly need to stop giving him money for for lessons, because he's a piece of shit guy. But you can separate the two. You know what I mean? You can separate the two. Jordan B. Peterson has a good lesson to teach that we should all learn. You should stand up straight, roll your shoulders back, and keep your head up high. You should have an ordered life. Clean your room. That's what that means. You know what I mean? Like, don't live in clutter. Don't, you know what I mean? Be organized. It's 90% of it. Like the Anthony Robbins said, just be organized, man. Have a schedule, have it filled. Hit as many goals as you can, and then recognize the fact that you didn't hit them all, and then try again tomorrow and try to get one. You know what I mean? Like, clean your room. Eat lobsters with butter, right? Anyways, hero worship. Never meet your heroes. I say no. Meet your heroes. Understand that they're all flawed. And I am flawed. Right? Say, oh, Pete, how can you call yourself a Christian and use all those cuss words? How can I not? How can I not? I have to. Almost. I almost have to. Because I don't want people looking to me thinking like, oh, this guy, this guy's saying, oh, here's the way, walk ye in it. Every preacher does it. Every teacher. Jordan Peterson made the same mistake. It's like, oh no, now I've got it all figured out. I am the complete human being. Here is the way, walk ye in it. No, I've fallen for that far too many times. And every single time I was met with bitter disappointment. And then I learned how to not be disappointed. You want to know the secret? It's just, look, meet your heroes. Get that disappointment and then understand that you are equally as disappointing to somebody. Remember when you found out that your parents were full of shit? Right? Because when you're a little kid, like, you look at your parents, you're like, man, these people are gods. They'd never lie to me. They would never do anything that would be corrupt. You know what I mean? And then you hit, 12, 13, 14, you start realizing like, oh no, these are just people. These are just regular old assholes. Like, you realize that your parents are corrupt, just like you. I mean, you don't realize it in the moment, but like after a while you start realizing like, oh no, my parents are flawed and I love them. I don't have to pick one or the other. Like, I can do both. Right? I can look to Jordan B. Peterson's teachings and say, I can extract from this and also realize that he's just an asshole that has his own personal life. And in his personal life, he is flawed. Just like your parents, just like me, just like you. Right? I look at my kid and I'm like, man, I wonder what I'm going to look like in his eyes when he finds out, some of my character flaws. I wonder how that's going to look. I wonder what he's going to say. You know what I mean? That's a tough one. They say never meet your heroes. I say no, meet them. Meet them and get to the nougaty center where all the filth is, right? And there's actually a Bible story about that, about exposing your shameful parts, exposing it, and that without exposing yourself to your brothers and sisters in Christ, there is no Christianity. You can't call yourself a Christian unless you show other people like, no, these are my inconsistencies. This is the shame that I'm dealing with. Let me show it to you, and that it can be aired out and cleansed by the sunlight of God. There's actual, I don't want to get into it right now because I'm already half an hour into it, but like that's the point of when Paul said, like when he gave that sermon about the circumcision of the heart, that circumcision was a method of identification. Goes back to the story of Joseph after all those years and he was second in command of Egypt, and his brothers came in and he was telling them like, no, I'm your brother Joseph, and they couldn't hear it. And how does this guy know about our brother Joseph? He's like, no, I'm your brother Joseph. He's like, oh my God, how does this guy know? Right? And then at the end he says he pulled his robe open and he showed him like, dude, I'm circumcised. I'm your brother. I'm going to show you the thing. I'm going to show you the thing that nobody's allowed to see. Just me, my wife, maybe my doctor. I'm circumcised. I'm one of the tribe. Right? It was wildly inappropriate to go showing your dick to other people. back then, it was just as inappropriate then as it is today, probably more so back then. And he pulls his dick out and he says, see, let me show you my junk. And then, a couple thousand years later, here comes Paul. And he says, like the circumcision of the heart, you have to show people that you're circumcised in your heart. You have to show them your junk in your heart. You see what I'm saying? And that's the rite of passage. That's the ID card of the Christian. Is like, here are the things that I'm struggling with and that I deal with, and here's how big of an asshole I am. And that's what that preacher was saying when he started his sermon off. He's like, hey everybody, you see I'm short and fat, and my wife is tall and beautiful and whatever. Guess what? Let me show you. Let me show you what I'm truly dealing with internally. That I'm weak just like you. And my strength is not in me, it's in Christ. And in this community of Christians, where two or more are gathered. And this is the only place that I'm safe from myself. You know what I mean? Jesus didn't come to save the world, he came to save you. Right? From you. Anyways. Owen Benjamin. And I know I bring him up a lot, kind of ad nauseum. By the way, you should check out his talk with Flecca. By the way, if you're not already into Flecca's talks, you need to get way into Flecca's talks, right? Go on to Flecca's talks on YouTube, hit subscribe, and the bell icon, and all that other stuff, right? He was on Owen Benjamin, and it was a really good show. I recommend you watch it, but Owen Benjamin beat me to a topic that I was going to talk about yesterday, but I didn't get to it. So I'm just looking at this like, damn you, Owen Benjamin. But he beat me to, listen, Nick Kroll was on Joe Rogan. And he's there to promote, right? Because a lot of times, you don't realize it, but a lot of times the timing of when certain guests are on is because they have a new book or a new show or a new special or whatever. Nick Kroll was on his show talking about his new Netflix season of his cartoon that he does. Now, I've always thought Nick Kroll was hilarious because I only learned about him from The League. Da, 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 da. And even The League got a little crazy a few times, but it was like, it's FX. They're walking the line. I appreciate the severity of the humor, but it got close. But now Nick Kroll has a special on Netflix. I'm sorry, not a special, a show. Which the second season of this show is out. It's a cartoon about pre-puberty, like kids that are of the age where they're just going through puberty, so like 11, 12, and it's all about just masturbation and sex and the way that they conceptualize these concepts is in this cartoon is with demons, hobgoblins, whatever you want to call them. That's what that cartoon is. And the reason that this is absolutely satanic it's a number of reasons. Is that you would not be, and Nick Kroll even says this on the Joe Rogan Podcast, is that you would not be able to do that show if it was real people. It would literally get you sent to prison. What they do on that show. And this is the softening up of liberals. They soften you up. Oh, just get used to it. It's just a cartoon, right? Like I said before, like, remember abortion? Oh, we're not we're the liberals were like, we don't like abortion either. That's why we need to have it safe, done by doctors. And we need to make sure that all women everywhere their privacy is protected by this. But this way we can make it so that only the most severe cases, if it's rape or incest or just some sort of egregious, like we don't want to have a lot of abortions. We want it to be few but responsible. They would always tell us that. They would always tell us that, and for the most part, the American people were like, okay, all right, few, right? Few, but safe. Okay. Just the rapes and incests, right? And the occasional person who's just trying to get out of their responsibilities. Few, right? Okay. And now what? Now what do we see on television? God bless abortion. From what's her name? People celebrating the fact that they've had an abortion. People making jokes and laughing about it. And who are they laughing to? They're laughing at us. Ha 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 ha. I tricked you. It took me 45 years, but I tricked you. 45 years in January, I think 20th. No. January of 1973 is when Roe v. Wade was passed. 45 years it took them. Hey, few abortions. Few, but safe. Come on, Christian. Doesn't Jesus want these women to be safe? Just few. Right? And we all said, okay. Right? I don't want to kill abortion clinic doctors. I don't want to see young women having back alley abortions. Okay. Now what? Now they're all laughing in our faces. Ha ha ha, we tricked you. Took us 45 years, but we got you. God bless abortion. Ha 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 ha. That's what they do. They soften you up. Nick Kroll has a show on Netflix, and I know because I'm one of the Netflix leeches. I have a friend that has Netflix, and he lets me use his account, right? So I watch Netflix. I like watching, I don't know, a lot of things. Like, Star Trek, whatever, Star Wars, anything. Like anything that's sci-fi, I'm pretty much going to watch it. So I like the service of Netflix, right? But Netflix is, more and more, it's putting me into a weird position because it's like, man, you guys are doing some pretty satanic things over there. Because right now, our civilization is going through a period where people are questioning their resolve to stand against pedophilia. There's people right now that are advocating for pedophilia, saying, listen, this is a genetic thing. It's not these people's fault. We need to figure out how to help these people. Don't be so mean, man. Like, what if you were born with another kind of addiction, like a crack baby? Or a baby with alcohol, whatever syndrome. That's how these people are. They're just pedophiles, man. Their wiring is wrong, and we need to figure out how to fix it. Don't be so hard on them, man. Right? And here comes Nick Kroll. Very funny guy, no doubt. He comes up with a cartoon where there's demons on it, talking to children about masturbation and helping the kids. And if it were not a cartoon, if it was live performers, everybody involved with shooting that television show would go to prison. Bad prison, rapey prison, Shanks prison, right? They would go to prison and be killed by the inmates for being pedophiles. But because it's a cartoon, come on, Christian. Come on, don't be so serious, Christian. It's just a cartoon. What, you don't like cartoons? What are you, against Bugs Bunny? Scooby-Doo? That's all Nick Kroll's doing, man. It's just a kid about teenagers who are masturbating with demons. That's how it happens, little by little. Little by little. Come on, Christian. Get with the times. Like, some people are just born gay. You want to deprive them of their happiness? Come on, just let them get married so that they can, they can pass along their inheritance to their boyfriend, so that their boyfriend can come and sit with them in their hospital bed as they die and hold their hand just like anybody else. These are people who are in love, man. No, we're not going to come after your children and try to indoctrinate them in schools. No, that's not what we want. We just want to be equal to you. We want to be happy, just like you're happy. Aren't you happy? Don't you want other people to be happy? Come on. Let them get married. And now, we have people that are literally dressing up as demons. There's pictures of it. I can show them to you if you were watching. I'm not going to put it on the YouTube, but it's like, I can show you pictures of these people who are saying, oh, I'm in drag, but it's like, no, you're dressed up as a demon. You've got a 5-prong horn on your head, and you're not dressed up as a clown, you're not dressed up as a woman, you're dressed up as a spiritual being with a menacing look, and you're sitting in front of a room full of 4-year-olds reading them stories about being a transgender person. It's like, we gave an inch. Now we have demons teaching our children. We gave them an inch. Now there's demons teaching children. I've got pictures of it. It's all over the internet. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not making this stuff up, people. Like, we've all seen those pictures because it was in news articles. Hey, everybody, look how wonderful it is that this demon, transgender person, like this demon with 5 horns coming out of its head in the shape, I don't want to get into the shape of the pentagram, but it is reading to children little by little. Come on, man. It's just cartoons. About 11-year-old children masturbating under the influence of demonic beings. We're going to be finding, listen, this is Nick Kroll's show. And therefore, at some point in the future, we're going to find out something horrific about Nick Kroll. That's his show. That is his creation. Creativity comes from a special place in the soul, and this is what's coming out of Nick Kroll's special place. 11-year-olds masturbating under the influence of demons. We're going to be finding something out. I have no idea what it is, but when we do find out about Nick Kroll, it's going to be horrific. Mark those words. Maybe not this week, maybe not this year, maybe not this decade, but someday. And it won't be long. And Netflix has a history of evil. I don't know if you guys, I got tricked into watching, there's a show that in the very beginning, the first episode of it, it had the lady from Splash. Remember that lady? She was in Splash, the mermaid movie. Daryl Hannah. Remember Daryl Hannah in her 20s? Ooh, wee. Remember Splash? Remember how hot she was? And then she was in, she was also, I want to say she was in Wall Street. She was Michael Douglas's art dealer. Was that what it was? Anyways, she was gorgeous, man. So Netflix has this new sci-fi special that had Daryl Hannah in it. And I'm like, okay, well, 2 things. I love sci-fi. It was a sci-fi show. And 2, I love Daryl Hannah, right? Right? Daryl Hannah. And the show was called Sense8. And I was reading when that show first came out, it was like, starring Daryl Hannah and all these other people that I've never heard of. And the story of the show is that there's these 8 people who all simultaneously share one another's senses. Like vision and hearing and all these other things. I was like, whoa, that sounds cool. And I watched the first episode and I was like, oh, cool. That first episode was like, I was saying to myself, like, this is one of the most awesome premises of a sci-fi show I've ever seen. And it was really well shot. You know what I mean? Like, the cinematography in it was really cool. And the story was just on point. And the only thing weird in the first episode was like, there was this gay dude. Right? And there was a lesbian couple and whatever. But it was like, okay, like, you know, for the last 2 decades, we've seen plenty of lesbians and gay people on TV. So, okay, Netflix, very good, right? Like, I don't need you to tell me that you know, like if you watch the BBC, like anything that comes out of the BBC, it's like every white person is married to a black person. And it's like at a certain point, watching the BBC, it's like, okay, Great Britain, listen, not every white person is married to a black person. You don't need to keep cramming this down my throat that I need to go out and marry a black lady. Like, I'm not going to do it, all right? So just, can you just show a couple on TV that looks more like what I have in my mind? I don't need you to keep showing me what's in your mind. I get it. You're progressive. Well, it's the same thing. It's like when I watched that first episode of Sense8, I was like, okay, like I want the sci-fi so bad that I'm willing to tolerate this. And I was thinking, like, I should probably write a note to Netflix and be like, dude, okay, we get it. Like, there's gay people in the world. We get it. But I don't need to see it. I don't need you to keep reminding me. Like, I know. But whatever. So I kept watching. Because it was a great show. I even wrote on Facebook, like, when it first came out, I was like, man, this is one of the greatest shows I've ever seen. And then, like, the next episode or 2 or 3 episodes into it, it's like full-on gay sex scenes, like porn. Like, everything except, like, seeing the actual penetration, but everything else. It's just straight-up gay porn. And, like, I saw some of it. You know what I mean? Like, because I was into the story, and then all of a sudden, there's these 2 dudes sticking things in one another's assholes. And I was like, oh, no. That's how they get you. That's how Netflix got me on that one. Right? Oh, it's a good story. No, it's not going to get weird. It's just a gay couple. Come on. What are you, some sort of caveman? What are you know what I mean? What are you, some stiff? All right, are you a Quaker? Are you Amish? Well, you can't see that there's this dude who likes another dude and this lady who likes another lady. What's your problem? All right, Netflix, you've got a good sci-fi story. I'll continue watching. The next thing you know, my eyes are being burned with images that I don't want. That's satanic. That is Satan's plan. Little by little. Give me an inch. Give me another inch. Here's a demon to teach you to read to your children. Give me an inch. Give me another inch. Here's a cartoon about 11-year-olds masturbating, which would be horrifically against the law if these were people and not cartoons in this show. Oh, it's just a cartoon. That's the inch. Beware. Beware of what you support. And that's kind of a hard thing for me, because it's like I'm gonna have to call my friend and be like, look, I need you to change your Netflix passwords and all that, because I don't want to do anything to support Netflix. Oh, and by the way, there are multiple members of the former Obama administration that are now on the board at Netflix. Think about that. Because sometimes people write me like, oh, Pete, you're calling Democrats, demonic and evil. It's like, yes. Yeah, there are spiritual things at play here. Very spiritual things. You think that's just a coincidence? Right? Obama administration people are now running Netflix, and they keep churning out all this anti-Trump stuff, pedophile stuff, gay stuff. It's like, dude, like, coincidence? That you think that's a coincidence? You must live in just the land of coincidences. If you know what I mean, like, just beware, I guess, is what I'm saying. So, just to recap, Nick Kroll is a pedophile. Never meet your heroes, and by never meet your heroes, I mean always meet your heroes. Always meet your heroes, and understand that people are flawed, and that the game is to quickly expose your flaws so that they can be brought to the surface and dealt with together in community. That's the only way we're going to make it. And there's a very good chance that Netflix is actually being run by Satan. Boy, I got a lot to think about after this show, huh? I do. Like, I'm sitting here thinking, like, wow, I really need to put some more thought into my stance on Netflix. Once again, I would like to give a big shout out to my new friend, Eli Rodriguez. Thank you so much for the dough, my friend. And if you too want to support the show, you can go on to archadvocate.com. Arch-advocate.com. You can become like Eli did. You can jump onto Patreon, give a couple of bucks a month, $3, $5, 20,000 billion bucks a month. I mean, it's not a lot of money. Whatever you want. Or if you just want to send like some dough like one time, you can do that on the PayPal thing. And I believe I have that set up on PayPal Me, so it's all private and whatever. If you want to send some dough that way. Thank you guys so much for that. And again, I strongly recommend that you watch Owen Benjamin talking with Flecca, his name is Austin Fletcher. And I recommend that you hit subscribe on Flecca Talks YouTube channel. Just that it's a good show of support, and that guy's doing good work, and he's getting closer to God, and I'm getting closer to God, and Owen Benjamin is getting closer to God, and that we're all getting closer, and we all have our flaws. Don't hide it. Don't run away from it. Don't try to keep it secret, man. Expose it, and show that you are of this tribe, that your heart is circumcised and marked for God. That's how we get through this. In Jesus' name, amen. Talk to you tomorrow.